The Cardinals 11-4 winners tonight over the Detroit Tigers in game number one of the homestand. Boy, an absolute beatdown. They had to work around rain a little bit throughout. They were able to almost beat out the rain. They technically still beat it out, but regardless, who was really beat down tonight was the Detroit Tigers. I am Ethan Hannaford. He is Brenden Schaeffer, and we are here to break all of the action down in the Cardinals' 13th win in their last 15 games tonight. This is the Cards Hub Postgame show. And as always, it is sponsored by Hot Shots here on Sports Hub STL and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Brenden, they just keep going. They just keep winning. I mean, at some point, people are going to start believing in this team.
If they're not careful, if the Cardinals are not careful, they're going to get some buy-in from this fan base. And I made the case that if the Cardinals, I think I said this right at the beginning of the road trip, I said if the Cardinals go 7-2 on this road trip, boy, that's something that I think is going to get the fans to buy in. Now, today doesn't count. Don't care about the attendance today. I don't really care at all about it during this Tigers series because we knew this rain was coming. You weren't going to get the impact necessarily right away. Memorial Day weekend coming up this weekend. The Cardinals continue the way they're playing right now, and tonight they looked really good against the Tigers, which came in with the best record in baseball, most wins in baseball. If this continues, yeah, I think you're going to start to see things turn around at Busch Stadium. And why not, right? With the way this Cardinals team is performing, there is a lot to love and a lot to get into about the way this team is rolling right now. And it hasn't really mattered the location, the opponent. None of it has made any difference over the last couple of weeks. And I think that's what's so exciting. You get that proof of concept that, hey, this team might just be good. And I know there are reasons to expect maybe or to maybe lower your expectations coming into the season, whether it be payroll, whether it be just the narrative surrounding the team, didn't do anything in the offseason, but they felt they had some talent on this roster, and we're seeing that talent come out, and tonight was another example. How about sharp Sonny Gray, Ethan? I mean, that's, I think, where we start with all of this, maybe a little while ago, so we forget because of that rain delay. But coming off of the outing that he had on the road trip, this was absolutely vintage Sonny Gray tonight. Had the strikeout stuff working, and everything else sort of spilled out from there as the Cardinals ended up winning in a rout.
You know, that's something that I love about Sonny Gray. And I found this stat earlier because I was curious. You know, he's had three what you could categorize as rough starts in 2025 so far. At this point, making, I think, his 10th start tonight, would you prefer that three of them weren't outings where he's allowing at least 4 earned runs? And in the outing where it was 4 earned runs, I think he didn't even make it through 5. No, you don't prefer that. But what I have loved is the grit and the determination that he shows following that. In the 3 outings following those bad outings, his ERA is a combined 0.47. So and I think it was 19 innings thrown and 1 earned run. So I love that the Sonny Gray that we're getting in response, it just goes to show the type of guy that he is. But also, I think there's a lot to say, you know, that there isn't the pressure right now that he has to be the guy that gets the win every single time out there, because the rest of the starting rotation is performing and doing their jobs as well. But Sonny Gray, boy, was he unbelievable tonight. I think in his 6 innings, he had 13 whiffs, and 9 of them were on fastballs. I think 5 on sinkers, 4 on 4 seams, but he had a couple from some other pitches as well. I mean, it's nights like this where you can just tell that all of his stuff is working together. And when he's able to generate the swings and misses, I think 8 of the strikeouts were swinging. Tonight was just about as close to peak Sonny Gray as you can get.
Yeah, 6 innings, doesn't give up any runs, only 3 hits and 1 walk, so limited the traffic on the base paths against him, 10 strikeouts. Again, you mentioned it, that bounce-back effort has been a real thing for Sonny Gray this season, continued tonight, and it makes sense. Like, the why behind those bad outings we'll continue to discuss and debate, and I bet you probably will see another one, right? It's still early in the season. Yeah. There are times, for whatever which reason, he's not quite as sharp. He's not quite on his game. There's nobody in Major League Baseball that I have the belief in that will go over the subsequent 5 days following a bad outing like he had the last time out, that's going to pour as much time and effort and energy into why the hell that happened and trying not to replicate it. He cares. I mean, He really wants to win and wants to do well and wants to perform. He has an expectation for himself to be that guy. So there's no doubt. Look, he was given up batting practice in Philadelphia. I don't know why, but it happened. And he clearly came out. And this isn't like coming back out against the Pirates, right? He had a start against the Pirates at Busch Stadium that was a real good one recently. This is coming out against a Detroit lineup that has been resurgent, has been a big reason behind the fact that they had the most wins in baseball coming into today. You got a lot of 800-plus OPSs in that lineup, and he held it down. So the opponent, I think, is notable tonight as well. It was going to happen, in my opinion, regardless of who he was facing on the other side, but feels notable that that's a pretty good Detroit lineup on the other side that's had some success this year. They didn't tonight. He had it rolling, and that really set the scene and set the table for what the Cardinal offense was able to do, making this game a laugher by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, Sonny Gray, what he was able to do tonight set the tone. And on the other side of it, right, Brenden, it felt like the Cardinals were able to do so at the bat rack immediately. And the way that things kind of got started off, knowing that you're going to be facing a guy that's making his major league debut, is an opener. It kind of felt like it was a recipe for success for St. Louis tonight. They're able to immediately get on base or Lars Nootbaar with a leadoff double. Wind then it gets on, and all of a sudden, a couple of batters later, and the opener, forgive me, I'm blanking on the name right now.
Gunther.
There it is, Gunther. Gunther's out of the game after what, 4 batters? I mean, he records 1 out, and from that point on, obviously, one out down, there's nothing shoot in. But it felt like the Cardinals started the way that they had to start this series, knowing that you're going to face off against Skubal tomorrow. They were able to get to the bullpen and do what they had to do tonight. But it felt like they set the tone on both sides of the baseball tonight. What were your thoughts on the Cardinals' offensive start?
Yeah, I mean, I like seeing that when you know it's an opener coming out there, and he's got an allotted number of hitters that he's going to face. So when they have to take him out in the middle of the inning, it means he didn't do his job, right? He didn't get the guys that he was assigned to get. And you start with that lefty-lefty matchup, and Lars Nootbaar says, doesn't matter, going to put one in the gap and make sure to end up at second base and flapping the bird already, from the very beginning of the game. That's what you want to see. But then it was nice to see the Cardinals, even after a couple of innings where they weren't able to scratch anything across, they were able to kind of get things cooking again against Montero, who came in and gave them some decent innings, but then was able to, the Cardinals get to him in multiple different innings, and just see it up and down the lineup is so good to see. We saw the switch from Oliver Marmol tonight with Ivan Herrera bumping up to 5, Wilson Contreras up to 4, and Arenado down to the 6 hole. And Arenado didn't have a big game tonight, and we'll continue to see him try to work through and give the team the best that he has and figure that out. But I thought, too, when you talk about a game where you start hot, this could have turned into one of those where the Cardinals, and we could be talking about them wasting some opportunities where they get runners on and they don't cash in. I thought it was the 5th inning where they scored 3 runs and the ball didn't leave the infield. Once they got the bases loaded, they were doing it with small ball, with good base running, with Arenado could have, been double play to get them out of the inning a little bit prematurely, and he's at least busting it down the line to ensure that doesn't happen. So there were some good things that you saw from a base running perspective where that was maybe a moment that the game could have turned, right? Everybody kind of knew the rain was coming too, and was this going to have an impact on things? The Cardinals able to get enough out of that inning, I think, to sort of make it feel like it was out of arm's reach. Yeah. And then you get into the rain delay. It was like after the fact, did the Tigers almost lose a little bit of their luster at that point? Like 5-0 instead of where it could have been maybe 2-0, 3-0 if they get out of that 5th inning a little bit more unscathed. 5-0, and then you get to the rain delay. The Cardinals were able to clearly be the more motivated team to pour on in the aftermath of that rain. And from there, you're able to, as Oliver Marmol, don't really care who you're throwing in the bullpen. It doesn't really make a difference. You're going to be able to get through this game and assure the first win of a series as you continue to try to stack series in the way that the Cardinals have been rolling recently.
Not the same Gunther, but I'll give GB Gunther some kudos tonight for at least trying to
gotta own it. He's got to own it.
Pitched poorly tonight, but the Cardinals were able to continue to pour it on following that first rain delay that I believe was 34 minutes long. Immediately following, they get to John Brebbia. We know the 2-run home run from Pedro Pajes kind of the cap off that inning, but I saw a lot of people talking about the at-bat that Jordan Walker had in that inning that was able to tack on a couple of runs as well. What did you see from Jordan Walker tonight? And does it feel like in your mind, Jordan Walker is starting to take steps in the right direction?
I mean, I think he's turning a corner, and I love to see that at bat in particular because this feels like more of the way that Oliver Marmol, if he had his way, would be able to manage the rest of the season, where like, hey, here's a situation where we're trying to get these at-bats for Alec Burleson. We know that opener who's a lefty is not necessarily going to come into play against Burley if we put him this far down in the lineup. So Burley's going to have some better opportunities and matchups throughout the night. He's going to be the starter in right field. He gets a couple of hits. We've talked to Ethan. He's got to be in the lineup. He's just really looked good at the plate recently. And so Ollie puts him in there. But then a matchup later on in the game, here comes Jordan Walker for that opportunity off the bench, and he puts a really good swing on a ball. We've seen better swings from Jordan Walker recently, and to be able to do it in an area where he was not the starter tonight, but he comes in and gets the job done, that was good to see as well. I think he's starting to row the boat in a really positive direction. We will see how much that manifests in his numbers moving forward, but that's just really good to see because we've talked a lot about runway this year in terms of Gorman and Walker getting opportunities. Guess what? Neither of those guys started tonight. The Cardinals were pouring it on, but for Walker to be able to come in a spot that made sense for him, contribute, that gives Oliver Marmol a little bit of freedom to say, you know what, I can use my bench in some ways. I can use this to the benefit of our club rather than feeling like, well, I kind of have to leave whoever's in there because runway, right? I can say, is this beneficial to take Jordan Walker off the bench and put him in for a spot where he might be able to contribute for us? That's great. That's a manager's dream where these guys who, whether they're getting the runway, whether they're getting in the lineup or not, they're coming off the bench and taking quality at bats. I think the combo of Burleson and Walker, that was really good to see tonight in the way that they were able to impact this game.
Lars Nootbaar 2 for 4 tonight. Mason Wynn 2 for 4. Brendan Donovan 3 for 5. Brendan Donovan just keeps hitting. I mean, it's getting to the point, I feel like, in these post-game shows where we're just not talking about it because it's becoming such a normal thing. And that speaks a lot to the kind of player that Brendan Donovan is, Brendan. I mean, at this point, I don't even know what else you can say about what he's doing because he's been so exceptional.
He's been unbelievable. I just created a marker. Didn't even know what that is. I'm learning StreamYard. He's been so good all year long. And it reminds me back to this past week where there was the moment where he's bunting and trying to move a runner over because he maybe wasn't in a great spot at the plate. It's crazy to look at the last 5 games. He's got 4 now, 3 or more hit games over the past 5. I mean, he has absolutely turned it on. Whereas, like, by the way, I'm never bunting with Brendan Donovan. Let's just make that a blanket rule. Let this guy swing away. He's one of the best bat-to-ball guys in Major League Baseball, and we're seeing that over the course of the past handful of games. Batting average up to 337. Gold Glove caliber defense. I mean, the plays he was making in Saturday's game in Kansas City helped put the Cardinals over the top in that 8th inning. He's an all-star player. Surely we're going to see that this year if his performance continues. He is absolutely deserving of the designation. Brendan Donovan is the type of player you build around. I've been tooting that horn, whether it's on Sports Hub STL or my podcast or wherever. Brendan Donovan, I mean, if the Cardinals get to a point where they decide, hey, this little retool, whatever you want to call it, it's not going to have to last super long. Because even in a world where we're not raising the payroll back right away, we can win with what we've got. That's got to be the signal to not only the front office, whether that's Mo's front office, Chaim Bloom's front office after the month of October passes and it's a change of leadership. And it's got to be a message to the ownership of the St. Louis Cardinals. Like, don't go the way of the Tampa Bay Rays where it's like, hey, we can sort of kick this can down the road and we're going to trade some of these assets before these guys become free agents because we want to get something for them. The Cardinals have, whether this season ends up as a playoff year or not, Ethan, the Cardinals have right now, it's probably a handful of guys, maybe more, that are no-brainers for early contract extensions to show the fan base, hey, this may look a little different for a year or two. We're not 100% sure what's going to happen, but what you can count on is that these are your dudes. These are your guys. And to me, Brendan Donovan has to be number one with that. I don't know if the Cardinals are going to do it. They take him to ARB in the spring. Wasn't a huge fan of that. Understood the impetus behind it. But the problem with that is you're seeing from him right now what was always there. And the notion of getting a bargain on Brendan Donovan is diminishing. And that's fine. You pay him what he's worth because I don't think this St. Louis Cardinals organization, even though there have been missteps in development and the way they've handled things the past couple of years, I don't think this organization is far away, whether it happens in 25 or it is down the road a couple of years. I don't think you have to look 3 to 5 years down the road before you can think about being competitive again. That's ownership that's going to make that decision of maybe how much to reinvest and where to fill holes and when to start doing that. But when that happens, I think you've already got a core together. And Brendan Donovan, to me, and we're seeing it, and I'm going to continue to talk about it, is one of those guys where you go, if we want to send this message to the fan base and try to get that buy-in back, we say this is our group of 4, 5, 6 players, whatever that looks like, and say these are our guys that you can go buy their jerseys, show up to the ballpark and root for these players and root for this organization. Brendan Donovan is a consummate pillar of an organization that's ready to win soon, even if it doesn't happen this year. I'm going to continue to toot that horn, whether it makes business sense or not. I think everybody that watches Brendan Donovan play knows that it makes baseball sense. And at the core, we're all baseball fans. We love this game. What you see from Brendan Donovan, you could not possibly ask for more from a ball player.
Austin in the comments saying, Brendan, what are you talking about? Cardinals are winning the World Series this year. So clearly, Brendan, the fans are bought in.
They damn well might. I mean, listen, there's a long way to go. And anybody trying to get through the National League is going to have to contend with the Dodgers, the Mets. I like the Cardinals' chances if they have to face the Phillies again in a playoff series. I think we've seen some good things from that matchup for St. Louis this year already. But, it's going to be tough to get out of the National League. I do think an NL team will win the World Series this year. That is my firm belief. But there's a lot of really good ones. And so maybe the Cardinals aren't that team this year. Could they play in October? Absolutely. Do they have the makings of a team? If you kind of squint, maybe you put on your rose-colored glasses, your cardinal red-colored goggles. Do they have the makings of a team that could advance and do some damage in October? Certainly. Am I predicting that it's just going to happen? Yeah, we're going to wait and see. But at this point, I do think there's a lot of reason, and I said it from the very beginning. From game one, I said this will be one of the most compelling seasons of Cardinals baseball to follow and to cover and to talk about that we have seen in a long time, because it could go a variety of directions. Right now, you're seeing the most fun direction is what you're getting right now, at least in the middle of the month of May, as the Cardinals are looking like a bona fide contender. Even if they didn't spend a bunch of money in the offseason, you're seeing the steps forward from players that had to make them, and not even all of them. Again, if Gorman and Walker are both performing, this team looks like the record that the Tigers have right now, to be quite honest with you. And the Cardinals might have some staying power because they're seeing, even without every single player on the roster firing on all cylinders, you're seeing the results over the past, I don't know, Ethan, what's it been, 3 weeks right now? It's been a legitimate run where the longer they sustain it, the more that just kind of becomes who they are.
That's what, like you said, the longer they continue playing like this, the more you're like, okay, this feels more and more legit. And especially on nights when they do it against a new team. And a Tigers team coming into town where a lot of people are saying, okay, but we're really going to find out what they're going to be against this team. And in the first game of the series, they beat them, what would have been a 10-run win if it wasn't for rain in the ninth inning, where Gordon Graceppo could clearly not grip the ball. I mean, they dominated this team, the best team in baseball by record right now. So, I mean, I think that every single game, what you're seeing is not only you're learning more about this Cardinals team, but you're also seeing this whatever the hell it is. You're seeing it speed up, though. You're seeing it speed up because you're getting more assured of what Victor Scott II is, of what Mason Wynn is, of what Ivan Herrera is, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar. You can keep going and going and going with the number of guys. Matthew Liberatore. I mean, there's so many guys that you were saying, okay, these are guys that, at the beginning of the year, like, well, they could be, but like, are they going to be? Like, we're not really sure. And now it feels the longer we get into this stretch, the more it is, I'm getting more and more confident that these are guys that we can trust on to be that identity, to be that core for the next however many years, which is so refreshing because, right, for the longest time, it was like, okay, the Cardinals need to go out and they need to get that piece. They need to go sign that piece, which maybe they still will need to do eventually once they figure out truly what these guys are. But it's nice to know that you have those core pieces in-house right now, rather than saying, okay, are we going to leave it in the hands of the front office to go spend this amount of money to go bring that guy in? Right now, it feels like the Cardinals are building that in-house, and that has me excited for the future. And the way that they're playing right now has me excited about the future. We just to finish with Brendan Donovan here. I just had to look it up real quick. Right now, he is 4th in Major League Baseball in hits. He is 5th in singles. This is kind of funny. 3rd in hits in Major League Baseball is Paul Goldschmidt. So it's kind of funny how that works. But Brendan Donovan has completely elevated his level of game in 2025. And that's saying something because everyone, I think, had very high regards going into the season for Donnie, but he's taken it to an entirely new level. And that's a guy that I would be shocked if the Cardinals aren't looking to get his signature on paper for an extension as soon as possible following the conclusion of 2025. There's a lot of things to be excited about with this team now as we go back and we take a gander back at the box score. Wilson Contreras ends an 0-for-14 stretch tonight. Ivan Herrera continues to hit. Was 2 for 5. Burley 2 for 2. 16 hits in total. The 22nd time this year, Brenden, that this Cardinals squad has had 10 or more hits in a game. That is tied for first now in baseball with the Detroit Tigers. So, I mean, you look at where this offense was a year ago to now, and here's my question for you. I think that coaching can have different roles depending on the type of team that you're building, right? And the younger that your team is, naturally, in my opinion, the more of an impact your coaching is going to have. Is it fair to say that in a year like this, where there is so much youth on the team, that the coaching staff deserves more credit than perhaps a typical season for a team?
I mean, I think the answer to that is yes, that there should be credit administered to the coaching staff. I would say defensively, especially, and I don't know the impact he might be having on the other side of the ball, but John Jay, huge addition, I think, to this coaching staff that rounds things out. But obviously, Brent Brown, I mean, he's the hitting coach, and we talked a lot last year when we talk about Turner Ward and we talk about the struggles of the offense. It just felt kind of like the offense had gone stale, right? It was a little bland, and we just can't quite put your finger on it. At the end of the day, I'm one that's going to mostly look at the players and say the players have got to perform. But it doesn't hurt if you have the buy-in for the players when it comes to the hitting coaching staff. Now, a lot of the hitting coaches are still here. Turner Ward is gone. Brant Brown has come in. The rest of that coaching staff on the hitting side is still part of this. And so it's not that there were these wholesale changes made, but sometimes a different voice is needed. And when it's as bad as it was last year, just underperforming, we knew these hitters were better than they were performing. It makes sense to have a willingness to change, even if there, was resistance to that. A manager likes his coaching staff, all those things. It had to happen. And we said a lot of times last year, it felt like it had to happen. If this continues like this, crazy how good of a fit Brant Brown must be for this Cardinals team. And look, he was a hitting instructor with Seattle at the beginning of last season and was let go very quickly from the role that he was in.
Their offense struggled last year. Their offense really struggled last year. So you kind of wondered going in.
And you just didn't know exactly what you were going to get, but the Cardinals did. I mean, they seem to have a lot of faith in sometimes with a hitting coach, you might have a hitting coach that really preaches a good philosophy. The connection and the fit might just be a really real thing. And the role that they're asking Brant Brown to fill, it's a little different than the role that the Mariners were asking him to fill. He was kind of in more of a Jeff Albert role. You think it back to where the Cardinals had Jeff Albert. They wanted him to oversee a lot more than just the major league hitting staff. I think Brant Brown might be a guy that just wants to be that hitting coach. And so a better fit where the Cardinals have him positioned. And things seem to be going really, really well. And hopefully it's something that can be sustained and can continue. But certainly, yeah, I think as far as the coaching staff is concerned, we're definitely seeing a positive impact from that group relative to last year in the general nature of the way things went. I want to address real quick, Ethan, before we get your next thought. This comment from Samuel was asking about, here they have 2 bullpen games going for Detroit in this series. What gives? Reese Olson, one of their starters, was placed on the injured list, which kind of forced them to shuffle everything around it. So that was the result of that. But you know what? The Cardinals, you play who who you're scheduled, and they're taking advantage of it, at least with how they performed offensively tonight. So you love to see that.
Yeah, health plays, and the Cardinals have been able to stay healthy here to start off the year. Part of that's luck. Part of it's the way that you manage a team, and things are working out well right now for St. Louis in that sense. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is the Cards Hub Postgame Show following an 11-4 smackdown at Busch Stadium tonight for the Cardinals over the Detroit Tigers. Just a reminder that the Sports Hub STL postgame shows are brought to you in part by Hot Shots, who invites you to come out to their St. Charles location on Sunday, June 1st, my wedding anniversary, to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The fun starts at noon with a parking lot party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. Yes, you heard it correctly. The Budweiser Clydesdales. Prizes will be given away all day. There's a dart tournament that's going to be going on at noon, a bags tournament at 2, plus a chance to win Hot Shots tacos for a year. whole 365 days, boys and gals, a year. Congratulations to Hot Shots on 35 years. Hot Shots, St. Louis's home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. This is the Cards Hub postgame show. Cardinals 11-4 winners tonight over the Detroit Tigers in game number 2. And let's go ahead and let's transition into this question from Nick, who asks, question for Brenden: is Pages an MLB starting catcher, or is he a backup that is starting? Big difference. Good question. Curious of your thoughts, Brenden.
I mean, I think he's an MLB starting catcher for sure. And that could be true for a middling team or for a contending team. I think you can more than get away with Pedro Pages behind the plate. And it's going to depend on what you value as an organization, Ethan. The Cardinals value defense. They have, because they were accustomed to having it from Yadier Molina for so many years. They also got, as Yadier Molina's career developed, some really good traits offensively from him as he became a good hitter. He turned himself into a quality contributor on offense. He wasn't that when he first started with the Cardinals back in the mid 2000s, but he became that. And so you kind of had the best of both worlds. There's never going to be a 30 home run slugger, but the role that he served offensively was a plus role for the Cardinals over those years. But the defense and the way he handled the pitching staff is, I think, what stood out the most. And we know this of Yadier Molina. I'm not calling Pedro Pages Yadier Molina, but I think the comparison is there to be made in that he is a glove-first guy who is also showing a knack for offensive traits. His OPS of 647, nobody's going to go crazy about that and say that that's just amazing. But I remember growing up watching Cardinals teams caught by not just Yadi, but before him, Mike Matheny, who is a glove-first catcher, and your catcher's batted eighth. And that's just the way that it was. And nobody had an issue with that because the Cardinals organization knew what it valued from that position. They're getting those things from Pedro Pages. And I do believe he can turn himself into a quality contributor as a bottom third in the lineup type of guy, right? You're going to have your speedster bat ninth as your second leadoff man. That's a good fit. Your catcher can bat eighth or seventh. And if it's Pedro Pages and he's OPSing 650, and he gives you more clutch hits than most 650 OPS guys do provide, I think that's more than good enough. Now, obviously, this organization at this point in time has that conundrum because they just moved a catcher off of the backstop to first in Wilson Contreras. Ivan Herrera seems like a guy who could be destined for a similar move because his bat absolutely plays. Not 100% sure about him behind the plate. And as the Cardinals keep winning, this whole runway thing is kind of going away. Runway, I thought, was in part going to be Ivan Herrera, can he catch, and just finding out this year. And if he can't, well, next year you approach it differently. The fact that they're winning and doing it differently kind of almost gives you that answer without having to see a whole lot more of it. Fair or unfair to Herrera, I don't know what it means for his future. The guy needs to be in this lineup because this is a Cardinals team that is contending right now, whether fans thought, media thought, the organization thought it was going to happen. It's happening right now, so you might as well continue to pursue that in the way that you're approaching it. The on-field coaching staff and the players in the clubhouse were never going to approach it any differently, but to try to win as many games as they possibly can this year. Right now, that means Pages catching and Herrera hitting, and so, yeah, I think that works out perfectly well, and you'll answer all the Jimmy Crooks and the other questions as they come down the line. It doesn't matter right now. Pedro Pages is your answer, and it's a pretty satisfying answer in my opinion.
And you know what? And you kind of mentioned it there, but in the grand scheme of things, the catching position is, in my opinion, by far the most interesting position in the Cardinal system as far as how do they navigate the future of it. Because you do have some guys that have proven that they can play the position at the major league level, that can hit at that position as well. And then you just moved a guy that you're paying $90 million about, or just under, over 5 years to first base. That was a catcher. But you also have two of your top 5 prospects in your system that are catchers. So that's now that's a conversation for a different day, but one that will be interesting at some point to see how do the Cardinals navigate the excess that they have from that position. That'll definitely be an interesting one here. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is Cards Hub Postgame following an 11-4 win for the St. Louis Cardinals over the Detroit Tigers. A reminder that the Cards Hub Postgame show is sponsored by Hot Shots here on Sports Hub STL and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play. $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promo.
He is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This is the Cards Hub Postgame show on Sports Hub STL. The Cardinals 11-4 winners tonight, winning their 13th of 15 games here. We'll wrap up with a couple of final questions here, and this one pushing daisies in the chat. Are we starting to see the runway talk slowly and quietly fade away, Brenden?
I mean, if we don't see the talk fading away, that's kind of irrelevant. The actions are showing that there hasn't. I mean, I would strain to find how many times over the past 3 weeks has Gorman and Walker been in the same starting lineup. It's been a rarity because there's not space for that with the way that both have been performing. We can talk about runway, and I'm not saying this as a criticism of management. Like, they're probably doing it the way that they should be doing it. You still want to continue to get those guys involved. But if we're talking about runway, what's it mean? It means Gorman and Walker seeing the field, seeing playing time, seeing the lineup. And to me, a part of that was Herrera seeing opportunities behind the plate. Liberatore started the season getting runway. Now he's your best starter. So you're not really talking about runway with him. He's just in your rotation because he's been great. There's not a lot else to do with runway. And so, yeah, I don't know. We'll still talk about it, I think. But in the actions, it's like, it's kind of a nice idea. But we're going to continue to see lineups that make the Cardinals competitive. And that's rightfully the case. I guess that part of runway becomes, are the Cardinals a better team? Are the guys that we're talking about developing in Gorman and Walker in better situations if one of those ends up in Memphis? Like, for me, Walker is showing enough signs that you continue to use him the way that you are, and if he gives you that little spark that he's starting to show, hopefully you find more ways to get him involved and see if he can't take off and run with that, because his upside is still just about as high as anybody in this lineup. He was a first-round pick for a reason. Everything we saw from him throughout the minors is still in there and waiting to emerge on a more consistent. It's about consistency is all it is. So you want to see that. Gorman, there's a case to be made that there will come a time this year where, like, all right, is he just not getting enough playing time to justify what's going on surrounding him? Maybe you do option him. Does it help his development? I don't know anymore. That may not be the priority at a certain point. But, yeah, to the point of the question, and Ethan, you can let me know your answer here and let the fans know, I think the runway talk will continue to exist because it's just a talking point that we're going to continue to monitor and follow. Look at the runway action. It's like, yeah, these guys are part of it still, but it's not like they have to be in the lineup every day together, because it hasn't happened hardly at all recently that Walker and Gorman have started the same game.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it's still too early to be talking about moving on from runway. What this team is doing right now is extremely impressive. But as I've continued to say, figuring out what Jordan Walker, what Nolan Gorman are, that is just about as big of a win that you could have if you could get them figured out and developed as you could come out with here in 2025 based off of the expectations for this team going in. Now, are the expectations changing or adjusting for this team as we move along here? Potentially, slightly, yes, moving in the right direction. Are people probably saying this team's more of a 88-win team, 90-win team right now? I would imagine so. But as you mentioned, as long as that talk is around, as long as they continue to, or as long as, to some extent they continue to show some signs of promise, and right now that's been more so Walker than it has Gorman, you're going to continue to be asking those questions of what that looks like. I would be really surprised if there was any point in 2025 where for at least one of those three guys, probably more like two of them at least, we're not still actively having those conversations throughout the entire season, just because of how important and how highly they have been viewed by the organization as far as the future of the team and what that looks like. So I think we're probably going to be continuing to be keeping a close eye on their development, all three of them.
When you say three, who's the
long.
third? Who's the third that you're talking about when you say three?
Herrera with his catching.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I do not think you're going to see. And look, I said at the beginning of the season, and people were like, "What are you talking about? Herrera's the catcher." I was like, he'll catch half the games, and Pages will catch the other half, and then Herrera will get some more chances by DHing. Herrera will not catch half of the remaining games. I don't even think.
I don't think so either. That's why I said. That's why I said one of three at least, or probably
Sure.
more so 2 or 3
because from a runway standpoint, like his bat has emerged, and it's obvious, and we don't have to wonder about it anymore.
Right.
Really wondering last year. We've always known that this guy loves to hit and can do it. Now it's like, all right, he has to be in the middle of your lineup, and it doesn't really matter his position.
Right.
The other two guys, though, are still kind of the poster boys of runway because they haven't necessarily performed. I'm not going to say they won't option one of them at a certain point. I just don't know if they have to. You know what I mean? Like, they're winning. Nothing else really matters. What's more interesting to me, Ethan, than the runway conversation, and the one that we will start to have more and more, and if we've already started, is this idea that, like, if this continues and you're playing well and you're in second, they're a game back of the Cubs lose to the Marlins tonight. That's a nice gift. What happens as you get into July when you're 8, 10, 12 games above 500? It's not a question if they're 5 up. If they're 5 games over 500, I still think that's not enough of a burden of proof to get them off of, we're kind of selling on these short-term assets. But if they're 10 games above 500, if they're legitimately in the mix, what do you do? Everybody assumes Ryan Helsley is traded at the deadline. You know, Alvarado is given an 80-game suspension, and people are going, Helsley to the Phillies? The Cardinals are winning games. Those teams tend to keep their closer. What the deadline's going to look like, and people might say, well, it's too early to talk about the deadline. You're 2 months away from mid-July. Don't care. I think that's way more interesting than runway, because runway is a fake conversation now. We can still do it. It's just not real. If Gorman and Walker aren't starting every day, that's not really what runway was meant to mean, and that's not a criticism. The Cardinals are doing it properly. You should play the players that are good. This is the big leagues. Like, at a certain point, you're going to try to mix those guys in where it makes sense, but you're not going to bend over backwards to the detriment of winning when you have a group that's like Burleson's performing. He's 26. He's a little older than the other guys, but he's performing. Let him be the runway. All that being said, the trade deadline and the conversation of what the roster looks like, this team's not adding short-term assets at the deadline, I don't think. But can you afford to sell your short-term assets unless you're really sure that it's going to sit okay in the clubhouse and with the fan base and with everything else that happens moving forward and the implications of that? Business-wise, it might not be the wrong thing still to trade your closer in July. But if you're in first place, I mean, St. Louis just would not have ever imagined, hey, we're in first place, we're tied for first, we're still thinking about trading Helsley. There's no reason for the Cardinals to speak on this topic. They will be asked about it as it gets closer. But, like, that's what's most interesting to me as we move forward with this summer. Not just is this team in it for the long haul from, like, a player and coaching perspective. I think the answer is yes. Is front office and ownership on the same page with that, or are they forcing the issue to say, hey, whatever you thought? Like, I think John Mozeliak in his heart of hearts thought this team's going to be better than people think. It's going to be like around 500, maybe a little bit above. But does that get him out of the range of having to sell at the deadline? Maybe not with the way they've approached this season. But they're better than fine. I mean, they're a legitimate force, and I don't even see a lot of holes. You want to ask, like, what would they add? Dude,
That's the question, right? That's the question: is what are you willing to give up in order to add, and where is it going to make you significantly better? That's the question right now.
I don't think you have to do that.
Yeah,
I think you agree. Not sell. If you're really talking about trying to win the Central and see what you've got, you either one of two ways. Like, you might add a piece here and there, but you have to not sell the guys that are. And there's a lot of short-term assets that are performing right now.
Yeah,
Helsley, Matz, Fetty, Michaelis. That's a big chunk of your pitching staff.
Yep.
I'm not saying in what I almost kind of want to see happen from, like, a content perspective, especially. Do a little bit of both. Like, you trade somebody that you're using. And again, I think of Josh Hader and the Brewers from a few years ago. Every time that I think about this conversation where they traded Hader and the clubhouse was like, well, you just traded our closer. We're in first place. The Brewers tanked after that, right? Because that messaging wasn't received. It didn't go over smoothly.
Yeah.
Could this Cardinals front office do that in a way where they're like, we did trade Eric Fetty. I know that's going to make y'all upset, but McGreevy's taking his place and we're not going to lose any additional games. Like, can that work? Or is trying to do both crazy? I don't know the answer to that. That's why I love it from a content standpoint of following this team, covering this team, and seeing what they decide and what they play themselves into is going to be fascinating in my opinion.
And the biggest name is Ryan Helsley because of how high of demand there is around late inning bullpen pieces at the deadline. What he has done up to this point in his career, what the season that he is coming off of, the demand that is going to be there for him. He is by far the biggest name that is going to be discussed, and the noise is going to be around. I think way more than Nolan Arenado, in my opinion, personally, just because of, how do you fill that spot? I think the Cardinals would be able to know what exactly they would do with the infield if Nolan Arenado got traded away on this club. I honestly, I think it would probably clear things up to a certain extent. That's not the case necessarily for Ryan Helsley. That's going to be a little bit more of an interesting hole to fill.
I agree, but I also could see, like, again, this is so speculative, and so I hate to be so specific, but why not? I mean, it's a podcast. Yeah. People want to hear our thoughts about it. So again, let's understand we're all speculating together. We're just imagining. We're not reporting it. We're not predicting it. Sure. If you traded Arenado because whatever the reason, I mean, right now he's struggling. You still lose more games because he's still very good defensively. And Oli Marmol, it's May, and he's already bumping him down in the lineup. So, like, that shows it's not going to be a problem from that perspective of, he's going to be an anchor in the middle when he's not hitting. That's not really the case. Gorman playing third base, more adventurous defensively and offensively, he'll be worse than what Arenado's been, unless maybe that gives him a confidence boost that he needs. I have no idea. That's the fun of this sport. We get to find out. They make decisions and then are judged on those decisions. Can't wait to see the way that plays out. But let's say they did deal Arenado, but they're still in a place where they're like, could win. Thomas Sajaci's kicking around down there in AAA. Like, is he a better option to come up and play third base than Gorman immediately? Like, those will be conversations that at least the fans would be having. I don't know about the team because they would want to see the runway for Gorman, but there's so many aspects of this that are compelling. Real quick, you trade Helsley. Am I advocating this? No. But I think Kyle Leahy, Gordon Graceffo, like, these are guys that are suddenly elevated into those potential roles. Stranger things. That's who it's going to be. That's who it was probably initially planned for it to be either way, or Roycroft or someone like that. So I mean, like, the only difference, right, is now it's much more high stake games come down the stretch here. But I mean, at the end of the day, those are the guys you're going to have to be relying on in 2026, 2027. So, I mean, it's all super interesting conversation, and there is going to be a lot of speculation as to how the Cardinals go about it. But I can tell you this much. The more that the Cardinals play like they have been, the longer they continue to play like this, the more entertaining that conversation is going to be, because it's going to be such a confliction between two sides and almost the opposite of what was expected to happen happening right now. What do you do when you feel like you're almost forced to buy? How do you go about that in a way that is doesn't damage things this year, but doesn't damage the future also? That is a fascinating conversation, and it is one I'm sure that is going to be had many times on Sports Hub STL as we continue on and as the Cardinals continue to hopefully win more and more ball games. They win their 26th of the season, 26th of the year tonight. Is that right? 27th. They're 27-21 now. They're winning so many you can't even keep up. I know. I almost went and said where they're at in the standings, but I refused to do it. They are 27-21 overall. They got the Tigers tomorrow night. Shut up. They got the Tigers tomorrow night, 6:45. Eric Fetty versus Turek Skubal, coming off of a Cy Young season last year. He's got a 2.67 ERA. If the Cardinals are able to find a way to win tomorrow's game, then they are set up for the opportunity to take another series sweep with another bullpen game coming on Wednesday. So we'll just have to see what happens. Any final thoughts here, Brenden? Missouri apprentice loves Pedro, and I think Pedro's worth loving. So that's my final thought.
He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This has been the Cards Hub Postgame Show on Sports Hub STL. We appreciate you tuning in, and we look forward to chatting with you tomorrow morning on 365 and then tomorrow night as well on the Postgame Show. We'll see you then.